Commonwealth, I'll hear from you.
The defendant raised her gun, leveled it at Pat Noonan's face, and pulled the trigger. There are two reasons that Pat Noonan is alive today. The first being that Ms. Fitzsimmons' gun, while it had a full magazine, it did not have a round in the chamber. The second reason was that Pat Noonan, based on his years and decades of training and experience, reacted in a professional way when he protected both himself and everyone else in that house. Pat Noonan is 50 years old. He is married to his wife, Angie, for 25 years. He has a son, Jonathan, who goes to school locally, college. He grew up in New York State at first and moved to Massachusetts to North Andover when he was 4 years old. He moved here with his father, his mother, his older sister. He went through the North Andover public school systems and eventually went to St. John's Prep, where he graduated from. He eventually spent a bit of time in college, but his real goal was to join the military, which he did. He joined the Air Force and went to boot camp out west. He eventually joined the security forces of the Air Force, where he was trained to secure nuclear weapons. He did that pretty much his whole time while he was in the Air Force. It was specialized training, weapons training, stress shooting training, defensive tactics training. His first assignment was on the ground in a Humvee. Later on, he joined another squadron and patrolled in a helicopter. He was honorably discharged from the Air Force when he came back to North Andover. There, he worked security, armed security, at the Seabrook nuclear power plant. All the while, his goal being to become a police officer, which he eventually did in North Andover. He worked in the North Andover police for years. It was his hometown police force. He joined the SWAT team, which is a specialized unit that deals with emergent violent situations, barricaded people, hostage situations, serving armed warrants, and the like. It was during that time that they trained twice a month and 40 hours in a separate block a year. He did that for years at North Andover. He eventually transferred to the Lawrence Police Department. And he did that because he wanted to have a busier atmosphere. Lawrence is a lot busier than North Andover. He worked there for a number of years. Again, the SWAT team, he was a detective, had a specialized training. And back in 2024, he decided to make a switch and come full circle. He moved back to North Andover PD, both because he wanted to end his career there where he started, but he also wanted to bring his training and experience to his hometown police force. That was one of the reasons that Lieutenant Daley, on June 30th of 2025, asked Pat Noonan to accompany him and Timothy Houston, another officer who was a military vet, to serve a restraining order on Kelsey Fitzsimmons. He knew Pat had the experience, temperament, and was cool, calm, and collected no matter what happened. Kelsey Fitzsimmons was a police officer. She had been on leave, but she was a police officer on June 30th of 2025. Also on that day, her partner, her boyfriend, her fiancé, Justin Alain, was concerned for his safety, for his 4-month-old child's safety that he shared with the defendant, and for Ms. Fitzsimmons' safety, specifically after events happened that weekend. And so we went to court, and he applied for and was granted a restraining. The restraining order granted him custody of his 4-month-old son, ordered the defendant not to have any contact and to stay away from him, and also that she would be relieved of her weapons. She was a police officer, and she had a service weapon and 2 other guns that she had legally. Lieutenant Daley was at the PD when Mr. Alain came in. The restraining order was faxed in the court, and Lieutenant Daley called Officer Houston, and they got in touch with Officer Noonan to serve that restraining order. They had gone by the defendant's home, Officer Houston did, to see if she was there. Unusually, her car was not in her parking space. It wasn't at her home. Officer Houston, who had seen it there thousands of times as he had driven by, noticed that it was parked down the street at a school about 100 yards away or so. So they knew she was in the area. The three met at the school, decided on a plan, and went to the defendant's home. They met her at the door, and you'll see surveillance video from the home of that encounter as they come to the door. Ms. Fitzsimmons comes to the door holding her 4-month-old child. They go into the house. There's no surveillance system in the house other than in the basement. They explained to her what was happening, that there was a restraining order, that there's going to be a hearing on July 14th where she'd be able to tell her side of the story. And she tells the officers, I know how this all works. They ask her where her firearms are, and she lies to them. And she tells them they're in the basement. She's sitting down on a couch. The baby is next to her. She calls her mother, who will soon come over, and they tell her that Justin's coming also because he's going to get custody of the baby. Officer Houston, who is also in the living room, sees a gun case on the sofa, and he opens it. Ms. Fitzsimmons lies to him again. I told you the guns are in the basement. The defendant's mother comes, takes custody of the child while they're waiting for Justin. The police have called Mr. Alain at the PD, so he's coming over with his sister, Courtney. The officers allow the defendant to walk around the house gathering baby stuff, equipment, clothing, things like that. So the child will have what it needs when it's taken by Mr. Alain. They follow her around to make sure that she is safe, that they are safe, that everybody in the house is safe. They go upstairs, they come downstairs. They go upstairs again, and you'll see photos of this, Your Honor. It's a staircase. At the top of the staircase is a landing where there's shelving and some of her police gear. If you look to the left, is the baby's room. If you look to the right, it's the bedroom. There's no door on the bedroom. So she goes in the baby's room and she's gathering things, and she's handing it to the officers who aren't going to take possession of it. They put it down. They're following their protocol. They're trying to keep everyone safe. At some point, she's in the bedroom, and Mr. Alain comes in the house, and she hears him. Now it's Officer Noonan and Officer Houston in the bedroom with the defendant. She tells Officer Houston, I don't want him here. I don't want to see him. Don't let him near me. Because she's upset with Mr. Alain. Officer Houston goes downstairs to make sure that doesn't happen. Mr. Alain, who had left the house with some baby stuff, came back and asked the officers for permission just to go down to the basement because he wanted a suitcase and he wanted some of the other baby stuff because he was taking the baby home. He lives in Stone, Massachusetts. So he did this. He was down in the basement. Lieutenant Daley is down on the first floor. Officer Houston is at the top of the stairs in the basement. And the defendant's mother is downstairs also. The baby is already gone because Courtney, Mr. Alain's sister, had come with them, taken the baby, and left the house. Officer Noonan is standing on the landing watching the defendant in the bedroom. She's on her knees. She's gathering things. He notices at some point that her demeanor changes. She gets upset. At that point, she lunges to her right, forward and to her right. And he can't see what she grabs, but she grabs a firearm. Turns out to be her service weapon. She comes back. She raises it. Before Officer Noonan can do anything, she pulls the trigger as it's leveled at his face, and it goes click. It does not fire. Officer Noonan takes out his gun, is yelling at her at this point. Kelsey, don't do it. Drop it. Kelsey, don't do it. She is stepping backwards now. The gun hadn't fired. And so she was doing what the officers will describe to you as a tack rack. She has the gun in her hand. She bangs the magazine and attempts to rack it. She's unsuccessful the first time. Officer is still telling her, pleading with her, trying to de-escalate de-escalated. Kelsey, don't do it. She does it again, racks around. As she's picking up the gun, raising the gun, Officer Noonan fires. He fires twice. She is now moving. He misses and then strikes her. She immediately goes down. Lieutenant Daley runs up. Officer Houston runs up, and they treat her. They call for an ambulance in the fire department, and she's eventually taken to the hospital. The gun that she used, Noonan, was underneath her. Lieutenant Daley grabs it, puts it on the bed. Officer Noonan, still focused on procedure and what to do, picks it up and moves it farther away from her so it's not a threat. That is eventually collected. Officer Core, who shows up later. The credible evidence in this case, the only credible evidence in this case, I would suggest to you, will be that Kelsey Fitzsimmons raised the gun and pointed it at Officer Noonan. She pulled the trigger when she did this. The credible evidence in this case, Your Honor, will prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty.
Thank you. Mr. Bradl, would you like to make an opening statement at this time?
I would, Your Honor. Thank you.
And feel free to stay there, or you can go to the podium, whatever,
Sure.
whatever you're more comfortable with.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court.
Yes, please.
Counsel, ladies and gentlemen. Kelsey, no. Kelsey, no. You don't say that when you're staring at the muzzle of a gun pointed at you. You say that to a person who has a gun to their head. And you don't shoot someone in the chest when they are seeking clearly to only harm themselves. And when you do that, you quickly realize, Your Honor, that you need to adjust the narrative to save yourself. That's what this case is about, Your Honor. On June 30th, 2025, Ms. Fitzsimmons' entire world imploded, was destroyed when her fiancé, Justin Elaine, obtained a restraining order behind her back with unchallenged, untested allegations at the Essex Probate Court. And he took away, at 4:30 in the afternoon, took away custody of her 4-month-old Caden in an ex parte fashion. The North Andover police had to serve that order. And in the late afternoon of the 30th, three male officers, Lieutenant Daley, Officers Noonan and Houston, they went to go serve the order. Their job was to take away the baby from Kelsey, a new mother with a 4-month-old named Caden, take her firearms, and give the baby to Mr. Elaine. And that day, Your Honor, Kelsey stood in her house in humiliation in front of her police colleagues and friends. And she immediately processed all of the implications of this order, Your Honor. Everything that this fiancé had accomplished for himself without any chance for Kelsey to defend herself. He took away her baby. He likely cost her her career. He publicly betrayed her as her fiancé. He walked away from their impending marriage. She realized she couldn't any longer afford her house alone, so that was going as well. Her gun rights are stripped, and again, the humiliation that she's being served by people who she is friends and colleagues with from the North Andover Police Department. At that point, Your Honor, as she had this evolving set of revelations about how her life was in complete destruction, she made a decision for herself. And it's a decision that takes your breath away. It's a young mother who just minutes before they got there thought she had everything going for her, going back to work. She's on the schedule for July 3rd to go back to work. She decides to end her life with her firearm in her bedroom. She knows her firearm is in her bedroom, and she tells the police something else. She tells them the guns are in the basement because she doesn't want to involve them. The idea of harming them, the evidence will show, is ludicrous. The evidence will show that she's trying to get them away from her, Your Honor. She tells them the guns are completely in another location in the home. She's told that she needs to pack a bag for the person that's taking her baby away. So she has to walk around the house, pack a bag for Caden. She has it in her mind The evidence will show that she doesn't want them around for this event, this horrible thing she's going to do. She goes upstairs to pack the bag, Your Honor. Officers Houston and Noonan accompany her upstairs. She keeps several times, she gives them items to have them go back downstairs with. She hands them baby seats and clothes and books and thereabouts and says, take these downstairs, please. You'll see that evidence, and as a fact finder, you will see that that's evidence of her state of mind, that she has no desire to harm any of her colleagues and friends. She's got no motive, she's got no reason to, and her actions are completely inconsistent with that. She's trying to get rid of them so she can have a minute in her room, not to do things that every young mother might want to do, but to get her gun and kill herself because her life's over in her mind. So at that point, Your Honor, her apparently what was later learned to be her mom comes in the house, and she's understandably upset. She's saying, how can you take away a baby from their mother? That's when Houston goes downstairs. So part one is accomplished, that Houston is downstairs. Houston's a friend. Houston was invited to her wedding. He goes downstairs. Noonan is still upstairs on the landing. You'll see from all the visual evidence, Judge, it's a stairway that goes up the small landing. Kelsey's bedroom's on the right, the baby's room's on the left. It's a pretty simple layout. Noonan stays up there. At this point, Kelsey makes it from the baby's room where she got some stuff across the landing to her bedroom, and she's in her bedroom when the I don't say disturbance, but when Mrs. Page, her mom, gets here. What we later learn is that she gets here, and Houston goes downstairs. Noonan, in a moment after Houston went downstairs, Noonan starts to go downstairs, and that was Kelsey's moment. Why? Because she wanted to do this herself, and she didn't want to involve Noonan. I told you about Houston. Noonan, she had been on extremely difficult calls with. She considered him a friend. She knew he had a wife and a child. Zero motive, the evidence will show, for her to ever want to harm this gentleman. She's alone in the room. Noonan's down the stairs. She reaches into the corner and picks up one of her handguns. She'll tell you that she is acutely aware as a police officer that she doesn't want them involved. She doesn't want them to be a part of this in any way. She keeps the gun close to her stomach area and walks over to an open spot in the room. She raises the gun to her head. Noonan is not even back in the room yet, Your Honor. So I don't want you as the fact finder to be looking for evidence that, well, maybe she swung it in his direction when he was coming in. Maybe she was pointing it at him at some quick transient time. That's not the case at all, Your Honor. That will not be the evidence. The evidence will be that Ms. Fitzsimmons had the gun to her temple, and then Noonan walks in, and he sees someone who is exhibiting only harm to herself and to no other. And we've discussed this pre-trial, and there'll be some evidence and discussion and cross-examination, Your Honor, about the Code of Mass Regulations that we discussed as it relates to or doesn't relate to Noonan's state of mind, Your Honor, that he's, as a firearms instructor and a SWAT team member and a former Lawrence police officer as well as North Andover, he knew or should have known that he was in trouble, that he was in violation of that CMR, the Code of Mass Regulation that I just mentioned. And he knows he has to adjust the narrative, Your Honor. Getting back to the incident, Your Honor. Kelsey has the gun to her head. She's trying to steel herself. Noonan comes around the corner and sees it, and the evidence will show that he is not some super cool James Bond type law enforcement officer, that he has a look of panic on his face, and that he's flustered. And certainly no one's faulting him for that, but that's what he looked like, and that's what the evidence will show. And that's when the words, Kelsey, no, are uttered. No law enforcement officer, Judge, the evidence will show, in his right mind would bargain with someone who has their hand on the trigger and the muzzle in your face. The evidence here, Judge, will show that he was trying to tell her not to kill herself. The evidence will show that Kelsey never pointed a gun at him. and that this was a mistake. It was a brain freeze. It was a mechanical thing. It was someone seeing a gun and shooting. How do we know this even more so from besides the lack of motive and the utterances that he made? We know because of the location of the firearm, Your Honor. The firearm, when Kelsey was shot in the chest and went flying backwards and landed on her back, and Daley will tell you that she's on her back. The gun was under her leg. If Miss Fitzsimmons is pointing the gun at Noonan, and falls backwards, how does that gun swing around to get under her leg if she's pointing it the way Noonan says? The evidence will show that's not consistent with the laws of physics. It is, however, consistent with somebody holding the gun to their temple, so it's already to the side of your body, if not behind you when you go flying. So the location of the firearm, the evidence will show, is also consistent with what Kelsey says happened. Finally, in terms of the panic, the flustered look on his face, Ms. Fitzsimmons was only anywhere from 3 feet to then maybe 7 feet away from him in this entire incident. And that might be where the view comes in here, the room. And he missed her in the first shot. He's a firearms instructor. He's a SWAT guy. 25 years, he misses someone from 3 to 7 feet away. Hits the air conditioner. That's panic, Your Honor. That's not cool, calculated action. That's panic. So Daley comes in. He goes over to Kelsey. He administers first aid. He rolls her to her side, sees the gun under her leg, behind her and under her. Your Honor is going to be the fact finder. You're going to consider all these things, the physical location of everything, the way things unfolded, the lack of a motive, what makes sense, what doesn't, what's doubtful. Anything that's doubtful is obviously not consistent with what the Commonwealth wants to have happen here. It's consistent with maintaining her presumption of innocence. Only 2 people were in that room. There were no body cameras. The police never interviewed Kelsey Fitzsimmons. They circled the wagons immediately, right at the scene. You'll see everybody treating Noonan like he's the victim. They circled the wagons immediately around Noonan. And everybody wants to defend Noonan in this situation. And no one even took a minute to think about whether Kelsey may have a different take on things, may have something different to say. Why? Why did they ignore Kelsey and circle around Noonan? Probably millions of reasons for the town. Millions of reasons. Ms. Fitzsimmons will tell you, Judge, she served orders herself. She served restraining orders. She's a delivery person. No one's going to be going after a police officer, no less someone that she knows, cares for, and has made repeated actions to get them out of the room. She will tell you with some indignation, I suspect, that she would never point a firearm at a fellow law enforcement officer. So for all these reasons, Judge, as the fact finder, I request, I ask you, and I trust you to well and truly try the case. And I am confident that after the evidence is in, Your Honor will find Ms. Fitzsimmons not guilty. Thank you.
All right, Commonwealth, you ready to proceed?
Sean Daley, please.
Ron Daley.